What's going on, guys? It's Adam from Spiritus Systems, and I'm here with Braxton today, and we're going to be talking about night vision. More specifically, we're going to be talking about a buyer's guide for night vision. And this isn't going to be your typical buyer's guide. We're not going to sit here and talk about FOM rates and SNR. This is more of a night vision guide for people that f***. That was my favorite way. I was like, made money. Do not publish that. All right. All right, but before we get into all that, we have to say another blurb before we start, and that is about Steel Industries. If you don't know who Steel Industries is, check them out on the interwebs, Instagram, whatever. We'll probably tag them, or you guys will tag them, right? So yeah, we'll tag them below so you can find their website. But they did loan us probably, I don't know, 60% of the units that are on the table. They gave us a huge selection. They basically let us take on loan whatever we wanted, and we've had them for quite a while testing them out. So again, if you want night vision, check them out. They have been our official supplier of night vision, so all the sets that we own have basically come from them. They're great to work with, they're easy, and I like that they make night vision kind of a digestible subject. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to them and they'll give you a very real world answer. You're not going to get lost in a spec sheet with them. So again, thanks Steel for loaning us all the nods.
The first we'll talk about why night vision and a little bit of what night vision is. It's image intensification technology, or you might see I squared or I2. And what that's going to let you do is see at night. And how it does that is takes in light. It's going to turn photons into electrons, back into photons. See more light, you can navigate, drive, shoot, and you can see in the near infrared spectrum of light. So that's what night vision will actually do for you at a base level.
One of the things we get asked a lot is, or what people might say is they'll say like, hey, why not just have a white light? Like, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, why choose night vision, or why is night vision important rather than just having a white light on your firearm?
So this is going to let us do things without emitting any light, any visible light, I should say, to the naked eye. So we'll say observers.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, we're hidden. It is kind of, I mean, in its inception, it is more of a clandestine technology. It's giving us the ability to see in the dark and not have anyone else know that we're looking at them potentially. Plus, I call it the cone. When you're using a white light, you're emitting a cone, and that's kind of your informational cone. So if you have a headlamp on and you're hiking through the woods or whatever, you kind of have to like keep looking around, and you're trying to project the center of that cone into whatever you're interested in. Whereas with night vision, although you do have a field of view, so I know somebody in the comments is like, well, there's a field of view. Yeah, we're going to talk about it, but there's a field of view, but you're seeing the world in this kind of grayscale, or green or white or whatever, but you're seeing it evenly throughout the image. And there's you're not kind of dealing with this one hot spot of information, and everything else is kind of a peripheral. So really we're giving you an advantage that is almost like daylight with Gen 3 technology. There's some things on here that are not going to do that, but I think that's pretty much it for why. So you've already determined you need it because you're watching this video, or maybe you're just watching it because you like hearing us talk, which is possible. Or maybe you want to take Braxton to Italy. That's also a possibility too. But you're here because you have decided that you want night vision. So really the next segment is requirements.
Yeah, so based on what you want to do with the night vision is going to drive your requirement later on for what specs and features you want, which we'll get into later in the video. But your requirement could be, I want to look at the stars, and that's a pretty low bar to set. Or it could be, I need to assault complex objectives that I drove onto under night vision or blacked out, and everything in between. So you need to lay out what you want to use it for, and I'd say like maintain some realism that most of us are probably not going to drive blacked out onto complex objectives with other people blacked out. So you might be able to save yourself some coin, which we'll get into more pricing stuff if you really dial in your requirements there.
A big thing that we preach here is do your requirements first on anything you're going to buy. I'm going to buy a new rifle. Okay, what's your requirement? Because if you do that, if you sit down and just write it down on paper, then you're going to save yourself money and turmoil in the future because you didn't, impulse buy something that you don't actually need. All of these systems have different features and things like that. So as you write a requirement down, you're going to understand, where you're at within this. Yeah, so I think really we should just start talking about features.
Sure. You start with the monoculars over here.
I don't know. We have a list.
Okay. So first, talking about tubes. So when people refer to tubes, they're talking about the image intensification tube that's inside any of these units. And that is what we mentioned earlier, that's taking light, amplifying it, putting out more visible light to you. That's gonna be usually the most expensive component in night vision. So that's gonna be where a lot of that cost comes from. You see stuff online, guys are like, why does this cost so much? Without getting into the photocathodes like Adam's talking about, it's just really expensive to make, and there's only a few people that can make them well, or as well as you would want to pay that much money for. So the tube is the heart of your night vision. Everything else is lenses and housings to house it and let you view through it. So that's probably about as much depth as I want to go into on tubes.
Yeah, and when we're talking about tubes, really there's, in the US market, there's really 3 contenders right now. So I mean, starting from like kind of what would be considered the lower end would be your Photonis tubes. That middle ground would be your Elbit tubes, and then the high end tubes would be your L3 Harris tubes. So if you go on any night vision builder, you'll see usually they'll have this like scale, and sometimes they'll list out the tubes with all the specs, or sometimes it'll just say we're gonna pick the best tubes available that match, or you're going to tell us that you want hand-picked tubes, but really it's gonna be in that kind of like scale. So your cheapest version of a goggle would be the one with the Photonis tube in it. And then there may be a more expensive Photonis version above that. And then it'll go into Elbit, and then it'll go into L3. And there's scale within those 3 categories. But for us, I think to this day, still I would recommend the L3 tubes, and we're going to talk about budget stuff. That is a huge consideration. The Elbit tubes are okay as well. I still can't yet recommend Photonis. I just haven't looked through a set of Photonis tubes yet that I've just been like, wow, they're finally there, they've made it. And what you're getting with the higher end tubes is obviously you're getting better. You could be getting light sensitivity. They talk about like SNR and things like that. Your clarity at night, all of those things are important, especially if you're doing this professionally, where you're trying to identify if somebody has a weapon or something on them. Something cheaper that has a set of Photonis tubes in it could be great if say you just want to, I don't know, hike at night with night vision on, or if you want to like ride an ATV around your property and you're not really on the professional spectrum and things like that, you don't really care about any of that stuff, and you can stand to have some distortion and some kind of weird things going on, and maybe a little more grain, maybe that Photonis tube would be right for you. I still would recommend trying to find a Gen 3 Elbit or L3 tube, just because I feel like the quality really is that much better on those.
Yeah.
But they are the biggest expense, and they're the things that people get asked the most. If you have questions about tubes when you're ready to buy, you really should consult like Steel Industries or whoever you're going to buy your night vision through. Just talk to them. Just call them and talk to them and see what they have to say about your tubes, and they can give you a little more clarity on it's a scale, right? And as you get closer to the higher performance, the cost exponentially goes up. But I would argue that you can't even really articulate. If I were to put, and we've done this before, put 5 different tube qualities in front of somebody and then ask them to tell you which is the best quality, it's a very subjective answer, right? Because it's hard for the human eye to interpret that data. They put it on a machine and they look at it and they give you the technical specs, but maybe you can't even tell the difference, but you could save $2,000.
Sure.
So it's something you should really talk to kind of a night vision professional about with the tubes.
Go back to the requirement bit about something you mentioned. I always think of aviators.
Yeah.
That like aviators, in my opinion, and in the DoD's opinion, are like the highest on the no-fail scale.
Yeah, for sure.
Of like night vision usage. And like if you think of the aviator as the apex of this pyramid, and then we'll say the infantryman can get his job done with a 14, no problem, like pretty much indefinitely at this point. You can find somewhere between those two that fits. Like you probably would be fine with a 14 for most things. If you are flying, obviously the the higher FOM rates, you get closer to like 24 to getting close to 3,000.
Sure.
Maybe it's worth it, because if you can't see, like you'll die.
Yeah, or
crash this thing and die.
Asset, yeah.
And
you need depth perception too.
Right.
So you're definitely gonna have a Bino set or something rather than a 14.
Yeah.
But I mean, and a great point about the aviation stuff is that you can find, maybe you find an aviation spec'd unit that has, nods or the tubes that were specifically spec'd aviation, and they're green, and you put those on and you're like, wow, these are amazing. And then you put on a brand new set of White Phos ones and they don't look as good.
Right.
And you're like, huh. That's just kind of this weird world of night vision where the technical specs don't always tell the story, in my opinion. I've definitely been surprised by some older Gen 3 green tubes that were high end in their day compared to kind of a middle of the road tube of today when you look through them. And I'm talking really about the clarity piece of like, wow, these, the focus on these is incredible. And there's so much else that could play into your tube not looking right, the night vision not being set up right or properly built, things like that. But if you go through a reputable builder, you're not gonna have those issues. They're gonna be built correctly, and you should be fine. So I mean, I think tubes kind of covered that. Really, it's like you're going for the best tube that you can buy. I wouldn't get wrapped up in the spec sheets. I would ask for I would give them your requirements and let them feed you a tube. They'll say, hey, this is what we think you would be happy with. So we talked about
actual use.
Which
we talked about earlier.
Real use.
When you start using it, like your blems and whatnot, like you can't see them because the world's not a flat white wall.
Exactly. You're not looking at just a white piece of paper or something like that. So I think the next big thing that people ask about is the binos versus mono versus, binocular versus pano, right? Those are kind of the next categories. So starting on the very end here, we have the venerable PVS 14 models that we have. There's a couple of different choices there. We have the Tonto, the RMV 14, and the PVS 14, all monoculars. I think two of them have Wilcox mounts on them, but they're all kind of in that same dovetail category. So a newer mount than if you're like a GWatt guy and you're used to using like this old guy right here.
With the gator clip.
Yeah, with the old gator clip or whatever. But the PVS 14 is the most prolific night vision device that's ever existed. There's more of them in circulation. The government bought them, probably millions of them at this point. There's a ton of them out there, and there's a reason why they have kind of a following is that they're incredibly light. Coming in at ounces, whereas everything else on this table is definitely over a pound.
Yeah.
So they're very light, but it is a monocular. We lose something when we only use one eye, and that's depth perception. Field of view is the same. It's 40 degrees. So you're gonna have 40-degree field of view, but it is, you're covering up one eye and you're trying to do stuff. I find personally that, after driving for many, many hours in Afghanistan under night vision in Humvees, very small viewing block, I wore that and it was terrible, right? It's like you don't have the depth perception that you have with both eyes. You just don't have it. Clearing rooms, doing things that are in interior where there's a lot of depth and angle change, I find that you're just at a disadvantage when you use a single tube. There's advantages though to having one, and that's the weight really. Thermal fusion.
Yeah, I think there's certain tasks where having an adjusted eye, this would be the way to put it, or an unaided eye from night vision.
Like a mixed
can
environment.
Be helpful. Yeah, a mixed lighting environment, dirty light, whatever they call it. Like there are some advantages, but I would not ever pick a monocular over binocular.
I agree.
All things being equal.
Yeah, I agree. Then we get into binos, and obviously, it's two tubes. That's kind of the standard, right? Most guys who are looking at night vision are kind of looking at binos, and it really is because of that depth perception.
Sure.
For me, that's really it. It's like you're driving or you're walking over something that's uneven, being able to look and interpret the depth is important to me. Most of them have articulating pods now. So if I need to go to that one pod up because there's a weird lighting condition that's making me not trust the image I'm getting, then I can just pop one of the pods up anyways and get that, same effect. And then we have your favorite, the binocular.
7 Delta.
PVS 7 Delta, again, pretty prolific. A lot of those out in the world. They still make them, surprisingly. This one is an unfair advantage because it has a White Phos Gen 3 tube in it, and it's amazing. But why don't we like it?
So you've got one This was the Army or the DoD trying to give everyone binocular night vision.
They're like, we know how to save money.
But only buy one image intensification tube. So your unicorn horn here, like there's sweet GWatt photos of guys with their 7s flipped up here on top of their helmet, just the way the mount works. But one image intensification tube in the center of your head, basically, and then 2 ocular lenses that are receiving the same image from this tube in the center of your head. And your natural binocular vision from your eyeballs has trouble reconciling that.
Yeah,
you can 100% use it. There are a lot of people that are no longer with us because of 18-year-olds with 7 deltas.
Yeah, correct.
That's for sure. And there's been a lot of dicey mountainside driving done under 7 deltas. Yep. You can do it, but like people do get motion sick from shitty 7s, bad 7s that they did not focus, and then you stack that on top of it being a biocular system. So there's a reason this one went to this one in the next generation.
Yeah.
This is, I think, objectively a worse format than just a monocular.
And I think most people would agree. And there's something weird about the, focusing the diopter side versus the objective side on the binocular. It just, if you get one of that even a little bit wrong, you're sick. Yeah.
This is
sick.
This is like the most no free lunch instance ever.
Yes, absolutely.
Like you can't get around that. You just need 2 tubes.
And it's a fragile, to be honest, that particular model, we'll talk about the model stuff too, but it's a little bit more fragile, I think. There's 2 eyepieces. It's just not, for what you're getting out of having 2 eyepieces, I'd rather just have the mono. But if you have the cash and you want to see 97 degrees instead of 40,
it is cool.
It's very cool. Yeah, when you put them on, you're like, wow. It's like almost like normal, but still not quite. God, I spent so much money on it.
You mentioned it. It's worth noting that anybody who has Panos in their organization usually also has 31 alphas or another binocular system, because that is not going to solve all their problems.
Yeah.
Or it's just too big, it's too heavy, it's too fragile. Like it's worth keeping the binoculars around, because that is not the best goggle for everything ever.
There's a time and a place, I think, for those, for sure. So the visual fatigue, that's a big one, I think, that guys leave out. They don't even understand that that's a thing. But, if you have one eye looking through a night vision device, ask me how I know. You sit on the side of a mountain long enough and you're just looking through one thing, it starts to do something weird. It almost shuts this eye off. Your brain just goes like, this isn't working anymore. So it just focuses, and it starts to maybe give you headaches. A lot of guys complain about headaches with that. But the inverse is that having, you think you would fix that problem with binocular night vision, but it could actually be worse, because you have 4 things you have to basically, you have your diopters, not on every set, but if you have diopters, you have to adjust those and your objective lenses to get a proper focus. And you find out that basically you didn't set the focus right. And so now you're feeling sick because one eye is straining. So I think visual fatigue is another big deal, and something, to be said of note. These goggles, 31 alphas and the Panos, they don't have diopters on the back. They actually use a lens to correct, right? Diopter corrects like vision disparity. So they have lenses that click on, so you can just click those on and change your diopter, and then it's permanently set to that diopter setting, which at first, when I first got the 31s, I was like, oh, I can't make these as focused as my DT NVGs or NVSs or whatever. And I was kind of sad about that, because there's a little bit of acuity that's lost, because I don't have the proper diopters on the back. I just have the zeroed out ones. But now that I've used them, I actually prefer it, because I don't get sick wearing them. I focus the objectives, put my caps down, and I'm never out of focus. I don't ever feel that kind of visual fatigue.
I think it's kind of a stacked thing. Yeah. Like, you're wearing a helmet. Nobody likes wearing a helmet.
Yep.
You're looking through night vision. You're probably somewhere that you don't want to be, sitting somewhere for a long time.
You're definitely tired.
Yeah, it's like a stacked tolerances kind of thing. So to your point with the adjustment, you can make your life a little easier by adjusting it correctly. If you prep for night combat, watch that video.
Yeah, prep for night combat. Link up here. Right here, there's a link. And then it's like over here. Yeah, so I think that's the visual fatigue piece is important. I think it's something that guys don't talk about, but something to consider. If you get motion sickness easy, I think some goggles, personally, and I'm not a night vision builder. Maybe somebody can answer in the comments below. Sometimes I feel like there's certain goggles that are easier to get that perfect adjustment on, but that's kind of an anecdotal subjective thing. I just feel like sometimes I'm having a hard time getting goggles to be properly focused. Other times on different goggles, I'm like, wow, it's so easy. I just barely even did it and they're in focus. So a reason maybe to get 31s for me, right? Because they don't have the diopter adjustment. That being said, another thing we can talk about is the maintainability or the maintenance cycle on goggles, which I think I've been harping on it for years. It's why I've been a big fan of the DT-MVS, the Actin Black goggles, because before all these other goggles kind of came on the market, they were kind of one of the pioneers of, articulating pod, full feature, night vision, that used PVS 14 glass. So again, most prolific goggle, right? Well, if you have those components in your night vision, then they can be repaired by anybody who repairs night vision. Whereas you start getting into L3 products like the 31s or the Panos, we start having, potted pieces that cannot be disassembled. And that was part of the design, right? Because L3 did not design this for us. They designed it for the military and specifically depot level maintenance. Like, oh, my nod's broke. And then you just give them and then they go away. And then they give you another pair. Whereas most people watching this video are like, hey, I have to pay for this repair. So that should drive your decision making as well. If you can't afford to just send these back to L3 and get them fixed, which is not cheap, you should consider that maybe a different goggle set is better, something that uses, the PVS 14 glass. Like if you see this, grab one of those 14s. So you can see, like, if you look at the diopters, right, they basically are the same thing, right? So yeah, something to consider. Maintainability, like, are parts available? Something to ask your night vision company that you're purchasing from. Like, hey man, if I buy this DT-MVS, are the parts just not going to exist in a year, or is this pretty serviceable? Can you guys repair this? That's another big question, I think. Like, can you actually repair the goggle you're selling me, or do you have to send it back to L3 every time something's broken on it? Because that could really drive a decision for me. I sent back goggles to L3 and it took maybe, 5 months for me to get the goggles back. So it's like, do you really want to not have your goggles for 5 months?
Yeah, so the parts commonality is big for repair, I think.
Yeah.
And then some guys will upgrade things. They might buy something that's a monocular and want to bridge it together or something like that. And if even the tubes in 31s and 1531s are not the same diameter.
Yeah.
Like nothing about 31s or 1531s is really shared with the...
Sure, and I believe the 15s as well. Somebody will, obviously, if anything's wrong, we're gonna hear about it until the end of time. So have at it, boys.
Yeah, but the L3 stuff that's not a 14 doesn't share many 14 parts, whereas all of these are kind of 14 parts. Base.
Yeah, which I think is great for, the proliferation of night vision, because it's like, hey, the pieces are there.
Yeah, it's a standard. It's basically an industry standard for most housings now.
So looking at the mounting mechanism, right? So we have everything here, which is funny because a few years ago, there would have been a much more of a mix, but now everything is dovetail.
Yeah.
So if you look at, I don't want to hold that one. So like, if you look at this mount here, this is a dovetail mount. That's what we mean. So it goes inside of, this is the piece that goes to your helmet, clicks on for all the noobs in the channel. But yeah, that's what we're talking about, dovetail. Now there's another type of mount that we don't have here, unfortunately, called ball detent. And it's the old aviation package that, has made it onto the ground side. And a lot of guys prefer it still. I think it's kind of dying out, but it's very expensive. Mm-hmm. But essentially it has two balls and you push them inside the mount into the detents in the mount on your helmet and it clicks in. And the reason why I think it was originally invented for aviation power packs to power the system and keep some of the weight off of the front of the head. So you'd have batteries, and everything in the back, and then the goggles up front. These originally had a ball detent on them. Now they have a dovetail. So something to consider. I would not, buyer's guide again, right, for people who actually just wear their nods, I would stay away from a ball detent. The mounts are expensive, they're fragile, no one else has it. Your buddy can't give you a spare mount to use. It's just, it's kind of archaic. Now, that being said, if you find a great deal on a set of goggles that have a ball detent, go with it, it'll be fine. But I think there's really not that many advantages anymore. This dovetail is very secure, and it is the standard now. All the mounts, the Cat X mount, this is the Wilcox, the G24 that everybody has, and then this Cat X mount, they both take the same dovetails. It's fine. You're gonna love it. Dovetail for sure. This one is yours, Buttonology. Pick out your favorite little set of nods on this table. Is it this one? Oh yeah.
I mean, I think the best example of switches I like is just a 14.
Well, tell us why.
14, I think, has the best switches.
I was going with the worst.
Yeah, where's the one that I don't like? Okay, that one's...
Sorry, whoever makes this. Yeah. What is that? That's the RNVG-A?
Okay. So this is just talking about the switches here. I'm gonna go. These soft little buttons, you can definitely memorize where buttons are. We all know the order of the NGALS dial and the MALS switches and the A and the B button and all that. But this is annoying to me, that I have these squishy flat buttons and I have a gloved hand and we're doing things. Yeah. And I have to find this up here, whereas this is just a knob. I just turn the knob, audible click, good to go. This could break off. Maybe you could make that argument. I've never broken one off.
That is a common failure point. And to play devil's advocate on this, that is very, these switches are recessed. They're back behind, the tubes and the everything. So it's like, you're gonna have a hard time breaking this. I mean, you may be able to break it in different ways, but breaking it in the traditional,
snapped it off,
put this into my pocket and it ripped the knob off or whatever. That's probably the biggest failure point I've seen on these, is guys bending this. Sometimes you'll see it'll be bent in. I think ours is actually bent because somebody was spiked it off the ground, but still works.
Yeah, if there was only a power button on the front and the rest of the stuff was somewhere else, but it's that I have a mix match of buttons all across the front to include an IR illuminator, which could be hazardous to your health to emit that IR light when you don't mean to.
No, and that's a big no-go for me. I don't, this particular set, I don't like it. And we're looking at, when we start talking about cost, the budget's kind of the last thing we're gonna talk about, but when we're looking at features, it's not additive to me. I prefer a very like a click. I know it's on. There is kind of the clicky tail cap. It's like a surefire flashlight on that one. Those are what the katanas. I do like that button, but I think really that when we get into it, a lot of this video is just our preferences. I'm not a big fan of small buttons that are too close to each other that feel the same. I really like the kind of that clear delineation between, hey, this is the knob that clicks it on and I have to pull it out and twist it again to get IR. Those are all things to consider when you're looking at buying a set, is what kind of buttons does it have? Do they look like they will suck? If you have the chance to actually take them out, I encourage you to go out at night, take all your stuff off, including your mount, and then put the stuff back on without using a light and without looking at it. If you can't do it, if it's extra frustrating, that's what we kind of saw with this set, was that when we would give it to anyone, they were just like, what the heck? And your finger trying to fit it in there and find the power one and hold it the right amount of time. It wasn't quite as intuitive as this guy is just this gigantic button. Yep. Everybody could feel it immediately. Yeah, so, and same with the 31s. This is actually very confusing. If you give a guy these and tell them to turn them on the first time, they're like, there's no on switch, because you have to depress this. But once they know that, then they always can reference that, and then you spin it for gain. Mm-hmm. So it's a master switch. I like that about them. I think Buttonology is important, but at the end of the day, all of these would still work. If you handed me these and you're like, hey, you have to use these, I'd be like, all right.
You can figure it out.
I would just become familiar with it, I guess. Pod articulation, right? Do you need it? That's the question you should be asking. And the answer, you don't even have to think about this one. It's a free one. Yes, you need pod articulation. Do not buy. If you buy it and you hang out with, I'm gonna be like, no, because you bought it and we told you not to. This right here is I don't even know what they call it anymore. It's a bridge.
The fixed bridge.
Yeah, fixed bridge set, right? This is how all all binocular night vision used to be, this way. And I think it was hard for people to imagine a reality where it wasn't like this, right? It's just like, this is what it was. Everybody's like, that's how we live, you know? We live in caves. And then they were like, L3, I don't know if they're the first, but we're just gonna say they were. You're welcome, L3. They were like, hey, what if we made the pods go up so that you don't have to put your night vision up like this all the time, and it gives it a lower profile when it's on your helmet. And everybody was like, that is so smart. And they did it for once. Yeah, so 15s, articulating pods. Why are articulating pods important?
First, I'd like to note that 15s are the least articulating.
They are the least,
there.
but they were the first, all right? Everybody else just copied them.
But like, that's it. You get like this half eyebrow view thing going on. So
yeah, so you'd have to push your helmet up.
But space age at the time. And we've said it many times, these things are tanks. Articulation's important because A, you can move a pod out of the way if you want to go to that like unaided eye, mixed lighting situations. Especially if you have to reconcile people that are using visible light, or there's things emitting visible light, things emitting IR light. It's nice to be able to have one eye monitoring both light spectrums. Getting in and out of, people always say vehicles, but just any kind of tight space, being able to pan them up instead of stow them up. Yep. I've seen 31s go clean over a guy's head, not tied down. Good job, 3rd Special Forces group. But it's going to maintain a lower profile. You can see them too, so I think you're less likely to run these $10,000+ binos into something.
Like into a wall.
Yeah. So you see strobes get ripped off like that too.
For sure.
So
I mean, you're not used to having, I think the driving is an important point though.
Yeah.
You're just not like, you can't, you know, somebody like, I mean, we'd probably be okay in most cars, but somebody like Adam Thrower is not going to be able to get into a car with his helmet on and have his nods up in that configuration.
He'll be out the sunroof.
It's going to be like, you know, this high. It's not going to work. So he would have to have, you know, he would have to either leave his bridged, which he was a bridged goggle enthusiast. So I just want to point that out on this video that he loves bridged goggles, but you would have to leave them down and then tip your helmet all the way up like this, which is, you know, weird with your chin strap and all of that. So you'd have to do that. I would say that they're very important. I would say there's no reason to buy, like, what are these? These are the RNVGs, and the price, when we spec these out, like you're maybe saving $1,000, but maybe even not saving $1,000, depending on what
maybe you just get the DTMVS.
Yeah, you get the DTMVS for similar price, and you have articulating pod. I just don't think there's any reason to ever buy a bridged. I think somebody mentioned once, like, oh, what if you need them to be strong? And I'm like, what are you doing with your night vision? Do not do that to your night vision, dude. It needs to be somewhere safe. Another point with articulating pods is stowage, like storing them, right?
Yep. You can make them flat now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at this. Look at this thing. Would you look at this?
But like, look at that.
I'll put that
Just
on.
look at that.
I can't.
Here, we'll put it right there where they can see upwards camera view. Sometimes it's actually better to be able to kind of, you know, flay these out and have them in a pouch, right? Like flat. Plus they give a little bit, you know, if you bump into something and the pods move, there, you know, you have a little bit of play there. This is just rigid, man. If you push on this, it can stand as much force as it can stand. And then it goes, I'm broken. So, like I said before, if you find the screaming deal on eBay on a pair of aviation spec Anvis 9s with Gen 3 tubes in them, and they cost $4,000, go for it. So I think the next one, tie downs, onboard illumination, and diopters are kind of the, you know, some other specs that you need to like look out for. Do you need diopters? Do you wear glasses? If the answer is yes, you probably need diopters. So you should get diopters if you wear glasses. That kind of eliminates only one set of goggles for you. Well, two. These are, you can't afford the Pano, so we're just assuming that. But the 31, so mean, but it's true, is it not? So we call, there's two categories. There's a couple categories, but one of them is definitely, there's a line we'll talk about where your wife divorces you. So there's like, you got to stay on, well, it depends. Do you like your wife? Because we got a surefire way to get And I mean Surefire like the colloquialism, not
Brought to you by Surefire.
Do not say that. We don't even know what Surefire is. But what was I talking about?
Diopters?
Oh yeah, diopters. Again, the 31 alphas, no diopters. Fine for me because I have good vision. But if you have poor vision, you might want to get the diopters. So that was pretty easy. The IR illuminators.
Onboard illuminators.
Don't care about them, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't hate them.
I don't hate them.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
I won't be
don't care.
upset if I have one, but I won't be upset if I don't have one either.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that I really see onboard illuminators actually get used for is lazy signaling.
Yeah. You're like,
Some
I'm
dude's
over
like,
here.
3.
Click, click.
Yeah, and then he returns whatever number, and then that number's been compromised because you guys have been doing that the whole time.
Yeah.
So
for me, it was, again, anecdotal, but every time there was like a soft MOS with me, I was like, what is that light?
yeah,
And then I would look back and it would be the guy who's never been on a patrol before.
This is how I
was
see.
like, and it was, because he can't see very well because it's nighttime and there's no illum. And so he pulls the illuminator on and he's just walking around with the flashlight on his head. I mean, obviously that doesn't matter to you because you guys are all
which that's another thing with the Switch, like the 14 style, is that guy did that on purpose because it's a very
he had to
deliberate
do it.
thing.
Yeah, he had to deliberately.
You have to pull this knob out and turn it over to the illuminator to lock it in place.
Yes.
You can spring it over there, but it'll return. So if someone turned that on, that was no accident. They're a moron.
Yeah, they turned it on intentionally, and you're please stop.
Yeah.
So you turn around, it's like right in your face, and then they'd say, "I can't see." So I don't care for them. I would still use a set that has them. I just really never ever use them. The only time I ever used it was if I had to look at a map or something with like very fine detail, and I had to like focus in on it, and I needed a little extra light. But I never really used them besides that. So I would say that again, if you need it, you have to select a goggle that has it. So it's part of the requirements. When you're writing your little paper and you're like, definitely has to be Panos, but I definitely have to have an IR light, you definitely have to choose which one you really want.
Or you're gonna have to get an auxiliary Princeton Tech, whatever.
Yeah, something on the side, which is, we'll talk about the cost of the goggle and then how much stuff you have to get to make this goggle work. The Princeton Tech, you add that to it, or the Surefire Vampire lights, a couple $100 or whatever.
Talking about tie down?
Tie downs, yeah, tie downs. Tie downs are, I think it's pretty important. I tie all my night vision. Do we have any of my nods on here?
These are yours, right?
Yeah, tie down. Yeah, tie down. Yeah. Oh, that has the neck lanyard on it.
Yeah.
These have a tie down. So you can see a lot of these don't have tie down loops. These do. So DTMVS does. That, very important, I think. You can see them. I put them through like 3 different loops. I don't want to lose my nods. So
yeah. I think everybody who had like a 14 that had to tie it down ends up gift wrapping them. Like my DTMVGs look like that too.
Yeah.
Some of these just have anchor points, which these are probably for like Ops Core style bungee.
Yeah, so you can hook into your helmet.
Which are not tie downs, by the way.
Yeah, that's not a tie down.
But you can use these hard anchor points if you're not using the bungees. There's nice anchored loops on a lot of units now for tying them down or bungeeing them. You don't have to do some like double bowline, triple loop like you had to do on 14s to wrap the entire unit.
Yeah, it's important though. The tie down loop, again, it wouldn't be the reason I don't buy a goggle, but it is definitely, if you're out here and you're looking at building a goggle, L3 looking at you, whoever, maybe put a tie down loop on it so that I cannot lose my night vision. You make it easier for people to tie down. There's a lot of little gimmicks out there. There's all sorts of like products, like this Velcro thing that you put on your helmet, and it's like no. None of that stuff is gonna work. It has to be, this is the way that I do it. These are those little Night Eyes S-beaners with type 3 nylon or 550 cord. I tie it through. I use a bowline usually on both ends, and then I have another loop on my helmet that I clip it into every time. That way your nods. I've seen a lot of sets of nods fall off people's helmets. They fall down, they hit a rock or something, they run into something. I've seen guys exit aircraft and they hit the side and it just pops off. If it's not tied down to you, it's gone forever. It's gone into the night. if they're tied down, they just kind of float with you.
Especially because, well, maybe not this one. A lot of these are meant to break away for safety.
Yep.
So if you know that and you want the breakaway to be active, because most of these you can lock the breakaway in case you just want to break your neck.
Yeah, or you want to die for your neck.
If you just want to die instead, you can do that. But if you know it's going to break away, and you guys have all discussed, like we have breakaway mounts for safety, maybe tie them down. So when it breaks away and you don't die, you can still just recover your nods.
Yeah.
And they're not in the moon dust. They're gone at that point.
Yeah, they're goodbye. Yeah, which, I mean, it's something we don't talk about a lot, but you should be tying down all your sensitive equipment, to be honest. All of those people who lost their nods were at higher tiers than I was at, which, not a dig at the guys. I mean, I don't think they care as much because, they're just like, they have 18 of these in their cubby. But for us, where we have one of those, and if you lose that or damage it, you're getting one of these, and the one that you get has eye cups that don't work and stuff, then you're just kind of motivated to keep that thing in service because you don't have the funding to, we needed another B2 Spirit, I guess. Can't really buy night vision. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the feature set that guys are going to look at, for selecting. There's some other things I wanted to talk about. There's like a minutia piece of this. If you go on Reddit, which is, of course, the best source of information, it's not totally just people talking about stuff that they Googled 5 minutes ago, but you'll get on there and you'll see a lot of guys arguing about the glass, right? They'll be like, well, I got this, Zypher 39287 glass, dude. This stuff is like, the Crow Mage forged it, dude. And it's just like, dude, what are you talking about, man? Like, again, if you put all these units in front of somebody and we're like, which one's the best? And you had them rate the tubes, they would not come out, except for the Photonis. Everything else, they would be like, I can't really tell. I don't know which one's the best, right? I just don't think it's real. You can jump down that rabbit hole, but you can add the price. We have prices written down here. We're going to talk about it, but you can add a lot to the price by going down this rabbit hole of like highest FOM rate, best glass, all of this stuff. Well, I'm buying it once. I should cry once. And then there's just some guy out there running around with his 14 with his mil-spec Gen 3 green tube that he bought off eBay. And he's out there just having a great time. So you're waiting to save up for it. He's already out just doing it. That being said, Gen 3, again, I'll reiterate it, Gen 3 and above is what I would do. And then the application is very important. I think if you're a professional end user and you're watching this, you just have a different perspective on like what you need. I think that the last thing is the manual gain on these as a feature, because we just haven't talked about manual gain yet. And I think that is the kind of the last professional end user piece that if I was just, the DTMVS, not the new one with the manual gain, just the normal DTMVS, a big criticism of this goggle is that it doesn't have a manual gain. So I got one of the first units, came out. I've been a big fan. I had DTMVGs before that, which I still think is a great goggle. But I bought these and started using them, and it doesn't have a manual gain. And honestly, I didn't really notice it to be a problem. Now, the only thing that I thought kind of sucked was that I could not run my gain very low, which I like to run my gain pretty low, almost dark, almost uncomfortably low for most people. And I didn't have the ability to do that, which now they do have the ability. So you can just get the manual gain version. If you're running kind of focus cap setup like this, you're gonna want to have that manual gain, which does take out some of the sets, like these DTMVSs. I would not recommend the S version or the non-MG version. If you're a professional end user, I think you do need that manual gain piece of it.
14
manual gain.
The venerable 14.
Yep.
Gains
Easy
right on the
use.
front.
Yep.
Easy to get to. So like as
also a
things
break
change.
point.
Yep, it is a break point.
A lot of people break off. They're in whatever gain mode you're in. It's just it. Or you have to use your Leatherman
Then it's no longer manual gain.
to fix it. And so gain, if you don't know what gain is, basically you're turning your sensitivity or your brightness. It's probably an easy way to think of it. The image that you're getting is either going to be very dim, or you're going to turn it all the way up and it's going to be bright, and you're going to get a lot of grain in there. There's usually a sweet spot. When it's important, in my opinion, is like when you're in very, very low light conditions, you're going to want to be able to jack that gain up. Now, this is an auto gain goggle, so it'll do it for you. I just found that sometimes it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Where I wanted it. I was using my illuminator much more to kind of compensate for it. a lot of the professional goggles have it. A lot of they're all professional grade, I would say, but they pretty much all have it. So just look out for that. I wouldn't get goggles without it. They do exist.
You gonna talk white and green?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's back to tubes, I guess, but yeah,
Yeah, a little
let's hop back.
So
I'm curious what your opinion is on it.
I think green's fine. And like in some environments, I prefer
Unpopular.
green.
Unpopular.
Yeah, they never used green, so they don't actually
Exactly.
know.
That's
But,
true.
I think in really, really dark environments, so an easy one is like an eastern woodland environment, or just anywhere that's heavily wooded. It's gonna be darker than your cleared areas, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, towards sunset, take 10 steps into the woods, it's already nighttime. So I think you get much darker blacks and like clearer contrast from green
I agree.
in lower light outdoor environments. I don't know that it's always true of indoor environments. You end up using illuminators and whatnot most of the time anyways, but I think there's harder contrast between the green and the black versus, like you mentioned, the gray scale or like the blue scale, whatever color your white phosphor tubes end up manifesting themselves as visually in actual color is much more monochromatic than like a green phosphor tube. Not many people making green tubes much anymore.
Yeah, I think
everybody's just making
I think it's pretty much dried up.
Yeah.
So you're really it's for the used market. I think guys a lot of times they ask us, well, I found this set of 15s and it's the guy wants $5,000 for them, but they're older, they're green tube.
Yeah, green's
and I'm
fine.
like, that's a hell of a deal, man. If you know for sure that set is not stolen and not so it's like some guy is getting married and he wants to sell his nods and his soul ultimately. If that's the case, you should scoop those up because that green tube is going to serve you well. The housing is going to serve you well, and you're going to have really beaten the market on price. It saved a lot of dollars and got a high-end set of goggles. 15s were not really a commercially available night vision set, so normally when you find them, it's a pretty good find, with a green tube. But I think if you go on any website now, you're not going to find a green tube for sale, brand new. Maybe somebody has some still out there, but most of it that I'm seeing is White Phos now. Which the argument for White Phos, and I think it's anecdotal still. I have yet, somebody please come forward again in the comments if you work for PO Soldier or something and worked on the White Phos program. Like send us the link because I'd love to put that information out. But I was told when we were starting to phase that stuff in, like, hey, it causes less fatigue. We were talking about that fatigue piece. I don't know if I believe it, to be honest. I feel personally, again, and this is subjective because it's just me looking through night. I'm getting older. Like there's tons of things that could be going on. I feel like I wore green night vision a ton and it never really bothered me. But now when I wear my White Phos too long, it's almost like it's just too light of a color, And then the contrasting piece I've noticed for sure. If I'm looking out at like a tree line in White Phos, it is not, to me, I feel like it's not as detailed as the green was before. Or even looking at the bar, the night vision focusing bars, I feel like I could always get a more crisp focus with the green tubes. All that being said, I wouldn't be afraid of a green tube. Yeah. I would really, in that case, I would kind of start asking about the specs, which is a great way to find out too. If you're looking at something used, again, pay for one of these night vision companies. Just be like, hey, can you just give me a consult on this goggle? So I can know more about it. You can see the serial numbers on it. You can ask for information. They could probably guide you as well into that set of goggles or to stay away from it. So I think the next segment is price. Most people would start with budget, which isn't a bad idea, but I think you have to establish why you need night vision and what do I need out of night vision? Because it really is going to drive your kind of your search. If you start looking and exactly what features you need, then you can start actually looking at the price. So everybody has a budget, so they kind of like to start there. But if you absolutely needed 4 tubes and you can only afford 1 tube, your requirement didn't change. You're just having to change what you have to try to do the same mission. So with a professional end user in mind, you have a requirement and it doesn't matter the cost. You got to figure out how to get the right thing. For the rest of us who are just, enthusiasts, or if you're just out shooting or you just want them because you're in the mindset of protecting yourself, things like that, then you're gonna really have to pay attention to cost, because like I said, there's that like DMZ where, you know, your wife divorces you on one side and she stays with you on the other side. So let's start out with our first category, which is my favorite category. What would you say? Like I have it written down somewhere. Whatever. It's like the $2,000 to
Yeah, $2,000 to
$5,000 range, right?
Like these over here.
Which night vision has got really expensive. And I think it's because, you know, I don't know, what are we blaming it on now? Inflation. Inflation, I think Vladimir Putin is the reason that night vision is expensive. We included some Russian nods. We're going to talk about those. The McRussian 5000s.
The collusions.
Yes, they're very good. The collusion goggles. But yeah, let's talk about what we have in this category.
So at the lowest end, being our only two, so just shopping around online, we can find somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000.
They're available, bro.
7 deltas.
If you're looking, swipe. Which way do you swipe for that
right.
you like it?
We're swiping right.
Come on, kids. You want some night vision? You want to overthrow the government? So you have to be realistic. Again, the DMZ of like, my wife will divorce me and she won't. You definitely want to, well, I don't know. You can be on either side, but you have to choose which side you're on, much like you do in a war. You know, are you North Korean or are you South Korean? So which one are you? Budget is important to, budget is very important to our discussion. Stop laughing, camera guys. You're ruining the sound. So anyways, what do we got in this category?
All right, we'll go.
All right, we have the McRussian 5000s.
Yeah.
We have the Jerry's.
Jerry's, the 7s being at the bottom. So that's our 2. That's
our 2. Yeah, let's start there. 2. PBS 7.
But you can find some with legit like L3 White Phos for like 20 UA tubes or these things.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
Yeah, because someone's done 7 delta surgery and they're like, you know what would be sick?
Or their surplus. They ran a contract, I'm sure, at some point for the Afghan special forces. That's what they were wearing, but they had White Phos tubes in them. So you can find these, like we Googled it, you can find them right now for $2,000 or $2,500. And they claim that they have L3 tubes in them and they're White Phos. So, I mean, for value, again, you got to overcome looking it through, you know, the binocular goggle, but it's $2,000. You know what I mean? Like, that's cheap. And you got to think there's other accessories you need. You need a laser, you need other stuff. So the best night vision you can get today, if it's it, I mean, it's a real choice. It's not my favorite choice, but for the price, I just can't argue with the tube.
If you're a war profiteering oligarch standing up a small dispensable force, the 7 deltas for you.
We have a deal for you, complete with neck lanyard.
Yep.
So PBS 7 Delta, low end, 2,000.
Yep.
I think we need to talk about this too. This is the PBS 15, which we showed. We talked about in a different category, because you can buy this new still. What's the price range on it? It's 11 to 12.
11 to 12.
So it's in the next category, but you can find these used. People will sell these to you. The government doesn't want you to know, but they will sell you these for cheap. So find that guy on the forum, and then, you know, you send out the message. You're like, hey, can anybody vet this guy? And then like 3 people suspiciously have a similar name to the
same
one.
IP address.
Same IP address. They're like, he's great. Send them your money, PayPal, not goods and services. Friends and family, give him your money, and then he will certainly ship these to you. But no, for real, if you can find them for $5,000, buy them.
I would not buy them new.
Do not buy these new. No reason to do. There's a lot of things I don't like about this goggle, but
they're a good deal because they're a surplus goggle.
That's what I mean. Yeah, if you can find them for $5,000, good deal. If you buy them for $12,000, it's not a good deal.
No.
Okay, and then really we have our real choices over here. 14s.
So like an actual 14.
Yeah.
And then all our 14 adjacent cousins.
Yeah, so like, and it's your flavor. What flavor do you want? You want the traditional? You want the GWatt special? And this isn't even I had the one with the 2 batteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can find one of those too. Or do you want one of these like lighter weight kind of fancy guys? You know, whatever, I don't really care. They all cost about the same, which is amazing to me. Yeah, but oh man, that is so light.
Yeah, that one's light.
It's absurd. What is this? This is, I don't know what it is. It's called.
That's the Tonto.
Is it the Tonto?
Yeah.
Okay, the Tonto. I think same guys who make the katana, right? Yeah. So who makes that? I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. But it's great. I said they'll find it. Okay, they'll buy one. This is very light. I'm impressed by that. Holy crap!
It's got the clicky.
We have a
cap.
scale. We could weigh it, but
this is the simplest one too.
That is the
You
simplest.
just push the.
Does that have that does not have a manual gain though? No. So
Manual.
yeah, it doesn't have a manual gain. So
So it turns on and it turns off, and you can focus,
this one doesn't either.
which might be appealing to you.
Yeah.
You might want the simplest possible monocular.
And why would you want that, you might ask? Because you may be bridging this with thermal. I can't do it myself. I will throw up. A projectile poltergeist vomit. Like, I cannot wear a thermal on one side, but some guys do it and they're walking around and I'm like, the chromosome type that is required to make that a reality, it's special. I would go with this one person. This is my pick for the 14 category, but it's because I'm familiar with it and it has the it has the manual gain and it has all the features. It does have an IR light, but we won't judge it too harshly. So what is that, AA batteries too?
Yep.
Yeah, on that guy. So
Single AA on the modern 14s.
Let's talk about the Jerry.
The Jerry.
Yeah, the Jerry.
The China knots.
Also known as what's the new name? The Rizzo.
Something 31.
Do you know what the new name is?
The Rizzo?
The Rix. R-I-X. Rix. That's the new rebrand.
Okay.
They rebranded.
The Rick 31s?
Rix with an X.
Rick's 31s.
R-I-X. Yeah, but these are the
possessive.
Jerry. No, not Rix with an apostrophe S. It's R-I-X, Rix. I think that's how you say it, right?
Okay.
So
These are the not 31s.
these are not, so everybody's calling their thing 31s, which is offensive to the real 31s, the two versions of 31s. The Jerry 31s are, by all accounts, it's hard to understand what they are because they don't tell you because they don't want you to know. But it's China. It's Chinese, right?
Yeah.
It's Chinese. Let's just say it. It's Chinese. Roll image of Xi Jinping. Now. All right. So they're Chinese goggles. They're pretty light. I mean, honestly, when you see them, there's a certain word that comes to mind. It's usually used to describe something that is, wider than it is long. I don't know, they're articulating pods. They meet some of the things that we like. It has articulating pods. It has the same switch that they obviously stole from L3.
This is doing an impression of good night vision.
Yeah, this is when you tell a kid to draw.
Yeah.
Hey, draw me night
Which
vision.
you saw in
Yeah.
Rainbow Six Vegas.
Yeah, and this is what they draw. It can take a battery pack. So in this category, I think it's the only one, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
14
in this
is
price
down.
range.
Yeah, in this price range, it's the only. So if you just got to have it. Now, the battery pack it takes looks like the phone. That you won't understand this if you were born in the 80s, but the phone with the cord on it, an old house phone, the long cord, that's what it has. It has the phone cord that goes to the back. So I would say I would avoid this.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm putting a big avoid this stamp on it. I'm sure there's gonna be somebody who sells a lot of these really mad at me, but it also has. I think they claim they can put L3 tubes in it. I don't really know, to be honest. The housing feels kind of icky to me. It's also Chinese. I can't guarantee there is not a chip in here that is just ready to shut off everyone's nods, right? Yeah, and this one particularly has Photonis tubes in it. So I tried my best. We went out to the range. I wore them. I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. So. Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning why we don't like those tubes.
Oh, the Photonis
what the
tubes?
symptoms are.
Yeah. So to be fair, I probably have never looked through the best Photonis tubes that they've ever made. So caveat here, right? But there's a lot of distortion along the outer rim. We notice kind of a lot of, there's visual distortion, there's light distortion. I feel like when you're using your illuminator, you're getting a weird distortion there. The tube quality just doesn't seem as good in terms of clarity. And then when I have to jack the gain on it, I'm getting a lot of grain.
Yeah.
A lot of grain. And it just is what it is at that point. You're also saving $4,000 or $5,000 in tubes. So again, if I was just gonna zip around on an ATV at night on my property or something, maybe I would consider something like this. For anything where I'm gonna have to kill another human or an animal or something, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm just not gonna run those.
They're always more purple, which just bothers me. They're really purple, and then micro channel plate oversaturation, I think is what
we went there, dude.
That's the real nerd talk for the chattering.
Yeah.
You just look at the horizon and you can see just from the sun setting over the horizon, you can see light chattering.
Yeah.
And it'll give you that weird chromatic aberration, or your illuminator inside a mall with its alt setting is to account for the
Yeah.
weird tubes that just can't handle that much light.
Yeah.
And they oversaturate. So
Yeah, not my
No.
favorite. Yeah, not my favorite. For the price, we're looking at 4K. We're really looking at
or
more for a monocular, which used to never be the case.
right.
That should tell you something though. If it, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's a no for me.
Yeah.
But the most accessible is the 14s with a good tube in them. And those price ranges $4,000 to $5,000. So you're looking at the Elbit tube on the low end, and then you're looking at the $5,000 would be the L3 tube on. I think all three of them are 4 to 5. Yeah, so 4 to 5, and then you have obviously maybe you can collect some 15s for cheap. The 7 deltas, if you can stand it. There's some guys who are just like, I don't care, it doesn't bother me. Get on it. That's cheap. And then we have the Jerry's, which they do have that fusion model as well. Same thing. I mean, maybe the tubes could be better, but I still just think the housing, the battery pack, it just doesn't feel as good to me. It is the only option that takes a battery pack at this price range, though.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the Mick Russians. These things are, I mean, they're probably not good for you, but we'll set them over here so I can see them. These things, I think we traded somebody like some patches for these or something. They're terrible, but I will say this. They're terrible in such a way that really shows me how good our stuff is. So like, I mean, there is one set of goggles that I would not want to use before the Jerry's, and that's these.
Yeah, these are
these are in fact worse. And they're so bad that like this, if you look through these, you'd be like, all day, I'll take these. So be careful if you're online shopping for like weird, you're like, I'll just buy these ones. You're not going to be happy with it. These things are scary actually, to think that somebody did anything with these on.
That's the worst night vision I've ever looked through.
Yeah,
I've looked through a Starlight scope. That's worse.
They're so bad. But maybe we're not using it right. I don't know. So yeah, those were a couple of patches. So on the cheapest end, the 7 Delta wasn't the cheapest.
Yeah.
This was the cheapest. But yeah, so that's our first category. Our next one was what, the 9
8 to 9. Yeah.
10, I think, was where we stopped it.
Yeah, 8 to 10. Okay.
Yeah, because we have these PBS 15s there, dude.
All right.
11 to 12. I don't know. Whatever. It's the mid-tier, right? Mid-tier Bino kind of category. We jump from monoculars mainly, and we start going into our Bino technology. And we have DTMVS, RNVGs, the RNVG-A, the Katana R, the Manticore R, the 31 Alphas, the 15 31s, and the 15s. So that's this category. So like
New 15s.
new 15s, yeah, not these old ones that are actually very nice with the green tubes. So what do we get when we get into this price category, right? So we've jumped to 2 tubes mainly. That's the main cost piece of it. Our housings have gotten bigger, obviously, a little bit more technology. Now, same field of view, remember we talked about all that. It really just comes down to features. DTMVS does not have a manual gain on it, right? Again, if we pop this guy out, does not have a manual gain, does have IR illumination. So consider that. You can put whatever tubes you want from your night vision builder, you can put them in there, and it does PVS 14 optics. You can get the manual gain version. We just don't have it here, so that's something to consider. I believe it's in the same price range, $8,000 to $9,000. 9 being the fully spec'd tube that we saw. We pulled those prices today too, and they seem to be pretty ubiquitous across a couple of different companies. So RNVGs, those are bridged. I just kind of say no just because they're bridged. In this price category, if I'm going to pay $8,000 to $9,000, I'm just going to go with the articulating pods.
If these were more affordable and there was like an in-between between monoculars and articulating binos.
Which I think it used to be that way.
It did used to be.
Because I think you had your monoculars, and then you had like your Acton Black, and you had your like Anvis 9s, which you were literally stepping up each time until you got to like a full military goggle. So there was like this in between, but now I think with the market saturation is kind of equalized things. People are like, I have to compete. So all the prices have they didn't go down.
No.
They did not go down. People are like, we're going to compete, but let's all compete at the higher number.
Yeah.
All right. So RNVGs, again, I'd go with the articulating pods on them, right? And I believe this is full power. We got IR illuminator. We don't have manual gain on this goggle. So no manual gain. For the price, I just don't think it's worth it. We got the RNVGAs. This does have manual gain on it. This is the one we were talking about though. It has those buttons, those flat buttons. So something to consider. Everything else up until this point kind of has a twisty knob. This, well, yeah, whatever, knockoff. But yeah, so it's got those buttons on it, but we used these quite a bit at the range and they were good. I would take those. Just the button would take a little getting used to. The katanas, where we get, so this is that 9 to 10,000, right? We went from 8 to 9, which just the value in this goggle, the DTMV, I still like that. We get into the katanas though, and we're getting that 9 to 10 along with this. Lighter, but it just has the one button.
Yeah, which could be a pro.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
If you want no IR illuminator, no manual gain, you just want something real easy.
Just want to turn it on.
Click it. Yeah, so this guy takes a battery pack. This is, the RNVGA battery pack. The Katana R also takes a battery pack. Is the RNVG. And the DTMVS does not take a battery pack.
Right.
Something to consider. If you want battery packs, then you're gonna need to pick something other than that. The Manticore. So this one, very DTMVS looking, does take a battery pack. Notable feature on this one, the battery door is on the backside of the goggle.
The 15.
The 15s has one like that. Yeah. I think the idea being that you would put this up and then drop the battery out and then put the new one in. I don't know.
But then you got to hold it up.
That's what I'm saying. I kind of prefer to have it on the front. Not a huge deal. Again, not a big deal. It does have a battery pack capability on it. This is your 4-pin. I think these ones are all 2-pin. This one might be a 4-pin too.
We have a mix of 2s and 4s.
Yeah, so 4-pin, whatever. You just have to know which one it is. But yeah, so and then again, it has the buttons on the front. IR illuminator on this one as well. So that's a Monocular. So like really when we're in this category, you're kind of looking at like, if you can find a deal on the housing, there's really not to me, there's not like a huge difference between these housings besides the bridge one, which I think we just kind of, don't go away, Matt, just go away. But the rest of them, you can get a lot of the similar features. But a notable thing is just that manual gain DTMVS. If you don't need a battery pack, which it takes a 123, has a good battery life, advertised battery life.
Should we talk about battery packs? Why would you want a battery pack?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like why are we even talking about it, right? Guys, there are certain guys who will live or die by the battery pack. They're like, I want a battery pack. I don't want a single battery. I mean, I use that pretty much, the whole time I was in Afghanistan. It was 14, and before we finally got some dual tube stuff. And the 14, I just never really was like an anxiety thing for me. I had a battery in it. I didn't even change the battery every mission because we couldn't. We didn't have enough batteries, so I would just use it. And it has a battery indicator light on it. So when the battery was going low, I could swap the battery. Got very good at swapping it at night. Just kind of, if I was doing something that I felt like I was gonna be wearing it for a long time and it was gonna be, if I was driving, I would swap my batteries before, just how it was. But the battery pack definitely extends the life. You're going from 12 hours, maybe to 48 hours, advertised, and just you're environmentally dependent. The biggest thing is this guy right here. This is the one from the 31s. This battery pack is actually a cold weather battery pack. So AA batteries, the night vision, for whatever reason, it does not do well in a cold weather environment. If that makes sense. So you need the more batteries to even last for any amount of time. But they are the ones who advertise a 12-hour runtime with a single AA, and then they tell you that you have 48 hours with the battery pack fully stocked with 4 batteries. Another note, I just think a lot of guys don't know it. This does have a strobe on it, and IR strobe, and then it also, you can run it with only 2 batteries.
Yep.
So, and you can run 5 batteries. It's just, something to note. Battery packs though, if you want it, it does offset some of the weight on your helmet, things like that. I've kind of just never really used it, to be honest. It, after having to have used aviation goggles for so long and having a battery pack that I had to have, I'm kind of just like, I just like having the one battery in there. Easier to account for.
So the Panos and other units, there are some units that have to do more with the aviation field, never had an onboard power unit. Like they were always, like you said, they were going to displace the batteries to the back of the helmet, and that's how they were going to run. They weren't ground hardened. They just needed a power source and they could displace the weight. But with battery packs, what I like them for is that we talk about not leaving batteries in your unit, like stored. Don't store batteries in there. It could corrode, the battery could burst, you could have a dead battery.
Sure.
And then your unit is potentially done. But with a battery pack, if you were in some kind of posture where you just needed your stuff staged all the time, you can just unplug it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, not the Panos, you have the alternate of if my battery pack shits out for some reason, I'll just go onboard real
Yeah,
quick.
put an onboard battery in.
So for like a ready room or something, everybody's done, they just unplug it. They're no longer running power to their unit, and they're not at risk of corroding the unit by leaving a battery on board either. So that's like one niche application I like battery packs for.
That's a good example. Costing too, right? There's like an accessory cost to every unit, right? So if you buy the 14, which is, that kind of lower end. I mean, I hate to say it like disparagingly because I think a lot of people see it as like not a good unit. It is a very good unit. But you still need stuff for it. You need a mount. You need a J-arm mount for the device. You need a mount for some kind of way to put it on your head. Maybe a helmet, maybe a bump helmet, maybe a skull crusher. So there is more of a systems cost, and then you're gonna wanna aim with something eventually. So you're gonna want some kind of laser. So that's something you have to, in that capabilities piece, if your answer is I want to, again, if I just wanna walk around at night, and just hike around, then you're gonna maybe pick a different goggle than if you're like, no, I'm a professional end user. My department is looking at getting into night vision. We might have to like kill somebody wearing this. You're gonna need a illuminator then too, or a laser pointer for your rifle. It's gonna kind of drive where your costing goes. Again, you're looking at $50K for the Panos. So $50,000 per man on the team. Once you have a mount and all of that stuff, you're gonna be definitely at that 50K. But you also need things like battery packs, which will come with the unit if it's from L3. If you buy 31s, it'll have this. But if a guy damages this cable, it's expensive. It might be, hey, there's an $800 cable, no big deal. That's a $1,000 battery pack. So you have to think about that sustainment cost on all of the accessories too. Whereas, you get pretty simple with a 14. You still do a lot of work with that.
Yeah,
that thing too. All right, so the final category is when we get into kind of the high dollar mill goggles, a lot of L3 stuff hanging out up here, to no one's surprise. So we're in that like $10,000 and beyond, right? Price range. And we get pretty disparate with the cost as well. So again, we'll start with the PVS 15s because brand new. Another note before we even get into this, all of the pricing on here is pulled from vendors and it's new cost, right? It's not used cost. It's not something you found, from a guy who built you some or you bought used off of a company. It's brand new. They're putting a new tube in, a new housing. It's going to come with all the stuff, which I think is important to note because you can find all of these for less. If somebody wants to sell it bad enough, you can find it for less. And you should search for a deal, honestly, because there are people who buy night vision and they're like, man, I really wish I didn't buy that. And then they sell it. So now we're in that $10,000 and above. And we're going to start with the 15s. And the 15s are, again, brand new, 11 to 12.
Also not supported by L3 Harris at this
Not
point.
supported anymore. That is correct. Not a good idea, I don't think.
Not new.
At that price.
Yeah.
Even if they're new, if somebody was like, hey, we have this stock that, is not sustainable anymore and we're going to drop the price down and you can get into a set for cheap, maybe it would be, but I don't think it's a good idea now. Very, very bomb-proof goggle, honestly. Very sturdy.
If something does go wrong though.
It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I don't like about it, personally, is when you spin your objective lens, it's kind of hard to see maybe, but you're moving the objective forward and aft. Kind of makes it a pain to have caps and things like that on it. I'm just not a big fan of that piece of it. If you're using like a Butler Creek or something, does not work well with these. So yeah, that's like on that. This is on the lower end now, which is horrendous. But very robust goggle, still a mil spec goggle. I don't know. They've been around a long time. Just like the 14, they work really well. The next on the cost spectrum is the 1531s. So what are 1531s? They're L3 goggles. I don't know the genesis. Somebody does. They'll tell us how wrong we are, but they are 31, next gen goggles or whatever, but they have the PVS 14 hardware on it, or the diopters and eyepieces. It also has an illuminator on it. So we're getting a little more into like the traditional mill goggle space where like they were like, oh, we like the 31s, but let's do this. I bet you it was the Marine Corps.
It seems a little more full featured.
Yeah,
it's like a more full featured 31 Alpha.
Yeah, they were like, oh, those 31 Alphas are cool, but we're the Marines and we need a different thing. And we like the IR illuminator.
Can you put an ACOG on it?
Can you put an ACOG? Can you put an ACOG on it? Can you put the eagle and globe on it? No, but so I think 1531s. We're looking at 12.5. I think you're getting a lot of goggle at 12.5. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's full feature. It's from a trusted brand. I think it's a good goggle. I think these are great. These are that 12.5 is. If you look on websites, a lot of times there'll be variants with these. Not with these. It'll just say 12.5. The tubes are the mill spec tube or whatever one that is. It's going to go inside this. So 12.5, 1531s. Like I said, full featured goggle, IR illuminator, all the bells and whistles. The next on it is the 31 Alphas. So noticeable weight difference between the 1531s and the 31 Alphas. But let's actually see what it is, because now I'm curious. All right, let's put it on here. So with my caps or whatever is on there, the mystery brand caps we won't mention, 1 pound and 1 ounce for those guys. And then the 1531s, dude, it was just hard to pick up, dude. 1 pound, 5 ounces. So why does it feel that much heavier, but it ain't that much heavier?
Bone crushing difference.
It's just on your head, your vertebrae. Feel that.
That's a McDonald's quarter pounder added to your head.
So it's honestly not that bad, but it is definitely heavier. Now with this we get manual. I should have said manual gain on both of them. Yeah, no manual gain on the 15s. Manual gain on this. Manual gain on the 1531s. So a simple master button, AA batteries. Which for both of these goggles and for that, all the mill goggles, pro goggles. Yeah, they're all. But a good goggle. I really like them. Honestly, at first I wasn't a huge fan. I really was wearing the DTNVSs most of the time, but I've come to really like the fact that they don't have a diopter on them. So that's something to note. They don't have a diopter. There's nothing to do here. You have to replace this lens, and they don't come with the diopter sets. And guess how much the diopter sets are?
Affordable?
$1,000 probably. Whenever it's an L3 product, I'm like, it's $1,000. I can quote L3 stuff because I just know that it's all $1,000. Okay, and then the final, let's get the Russians out of here. The final one that, again, why everybody's here, they're like, oh, the Panos, are the Panos. So we get all the weight, none of the features. So there's no IR illuminator, there's no manual gain. You just basically get this, and this, as an important note, this goggle had an Anvis ball detent mount on it before. There are some that have dovetails from the factory as well, the ground version. You will have a battery pack. You don't have a choice. There's no onboard battery. I do recommend this from a usability standpoint. Being able to articulate the pods up like this is very, very useful, just as it was with all the other goggles that have it. Normally, this is a fixed bridge. The biggest thing, I carried these for a while. The biggest thing that I didn't like about them was the portability aspect of it. Especially with the fixed bridge, you were stuck with this form factor. Basically, the goggle just looked like this, and there's nothing you could do about it. So you want to put this in a pouch, even with like our GP wide or something, it's just, you're so worried about it getting crushed or something snapping the bridge, So yeah. Again, if you're showing up in the black helicopter in the middle of the night and you just wear the nods the whole time because the mission's only at night, this is probably a real thing. And I don't know if we mentioned it, but all three of these goggles take a battery pack. Mm-hmm. They can. These two, you don't. The 31s and the 1531s have onboard power.
Panos have to run a battery pack.
Yes, Panos have to run the battery pack. They all come with the battery pack though. So in the kit. Yeah, so I mean, I think, on the high end, man, it really is all the L3 stuff up there. All the mill stuff.
We have the full mill evolution.
We do have the
7,
full
14,
mill evolution.
15,
Interesting.
31s and Panos.
What I'm most amazed about is that there's all these great housings out here now that are really making the market pretty competitive. But there really is only, like we said, the tube source it hasn't changed that much. Somebody's not standing up. You were talking about the magic towers.
Oh, the draw towers. Yeah.
Yeah, they melt glass and
There's a wizard.
There's a wizard there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So they kind of have a handle on that. They're like, how do they know? We just gave away the proprietary tech. But no, I mean, so that's all the goggles. Now I think it's only fair if we select our favorites, because everybody's here for our opinion anyways. They're just gonna ask us, what should I buy? So, okay, let's start in the first category. So our 2 to 5.
Our 2 to 5?
Yeah.
Can I get my good deal 15s?
No, that deal.
Then a 14. I'm going to take
the mil spec 14.
In 2 to 5, I'll just take the regular 14.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I have to agree with you. I think I'm going to take the 14 too. And I'm going to pick the one with a manual gain, personally.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, not all guys run their nods like that. I like to use a focusing cap. Which ones have them? Like these, something with a little aperture reduction. So I like to be able to really mess with my gain. And then I do like to run my gain very low in most instances. So yeah, I agree. I would get this fancy mount though. This thing is freaking cool.
The pivoting Wilcox one?
Yeah, because
that was cool. You can switch eyes on the go.
Yeah, it's like, can't do that with the old school mount. Yeah, so I guess the 14 for that price category wins. Like we said, $4,000 to $5,000 if you're buying it new with a fully spec'd good tube in it.
Yeah,
you can get them for less elsewhere for sure. All right, next category of night vision, we have that. What did we say, like 8 to 10 or something like that?
8 to 10.
So that's this down. The 15s are in there. You didn't even mention the Jerry's. That was on the old price. We'll put it in this one.
Not mention the Jerry's.
We'll put it in this one too. Come on, guys. It's the Jerry Seinfelds.
I go, because I still run DTNVGs. DTNVG, DTNVS are good with me. I think it's a lot of goggle for the money.
We're just gonna pick the same things, huh? Yeah, cool. So I would say that going with what I know, DTNVS, but the manual gain version now. If I was buying today, I don't think there's any reason not to get it. Sure. So I would get the manual gain version. But I have to say that I have been kind of intrigued by some of these other articulating pod goggles, especially the ones that take a battery pack.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's kind of cool that I can adapt a battery pack to this. Give me some options there, like you said, with the, unplugging it, keeping it stashed. But yeah, I mean, I still think Acted Black I've known for a long time. I trust the brand. I know that their housings are pretty bomb-proof. So I think that'd be my pick too, to be honest.
I don't think I'd be unhappy with anything in this price range.
No, I agree.
Excluding the Jerry. If you try
the Jerry is not, the Jerry is not real.
Everything else is.
Yeah, I would take these two. I would probably use it. I would not be. This would be my last choice. Is the RNVG.
Yeah.
All right. Now the hardest category: the PVS 31, the 1531, or the Panos.
It's tempting, especially on the Nocturne bridge now.
Yeah.
To take the Panos.
Yeah.
But really, I think I'd take the 1531s.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if I could only own one out of these three, I'm going to take the 1531s.
Okay.
They're the most fully featured. They take a battery pack. They have an onboard battery as well.
It's a known good.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's like they really are. They're known goods. They've been used. They have a lot of time on them.
Yeah,
for sure. It's hard to believe how old this stuff really is starting to become too, honestly. It's a hard one, but I think I'd take the 31 Alpha still. Yeah. Mainly because I just don't want to mess with the diopter anymore, to be honest. And these, again, I think they're great, but, wearing these out on a ruck march in the swamp for 12 hours you would just be very frustrated.
Yeah, it's more goggle than you need for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think right now, if you had to buy something, like value proposition?
I think I'd do the same thing again. Like, I bought my DTNVGs a number of years ago. DTNVSs are the current model. I'm just going to stick with Acted Black. Yeah. I like the switches. Honestly, manual gain or auto gain is fine with me. Like, I can make do.
Yeah.
Like, my DTNVGs are auto gain, and I just run the caps and make do. Like you said, manual gain, if it's on the table and it's not much more cost, why not take it? But I think the Acton Black stuff is still the best value proposition based on what I like.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I think we did it. I think it's just the cost. We're just trying to tell you the buyer's guide for people who actually use their night vision. Instead of sitting here and talking about spec sheets all day and S&R, and you can go on Reddit and argue all day about, you know, your FOM rate or whatever. Yeah. But I think there's just something better about figuring out what you need, looking at what your budget is, honing in on the right goggle, waiting for the right deal, talking with the night vision company. Steel they do a pretty cool thing where they go out, they host basically an event. You can come down and you can demo the goggles. If you can get to something like that, I think that's a good idea, because it will tell you so much more about the tube quality if you go out and actually look through the goggles than arguing about, you know, 70 more FOM or something. You can just be like, hey, I looked through all of them, I couldn't tell the difference. So I'm gonna go with the cheapest one in that set. You might be surprised. But yeah, so again, wanna give a thanks to Steel Industries for, you know, loaning us the equipment for so long. They really did us a huge favor. It's, you know, this is pretty much like a whole demo kit that we took from them. So really appreciate that. Again, check them out. If you're looking for night vision, they're a great source. We've been using them for a long time. If you have any discrepancies with what we've said, let us know, because we're definitely not night vision experts. We're just two guys, just playing guys that sometimes use night vision. So we're just going off our opinions here, but we think this is a pretty good starting point for most dudes to look at. Like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us make these videos and keep them going, bringing information to you. In the night vision category, if there's anything else you would like to see, like maybe we do one on lasers. I don't know. It sounds like we should just do it. It's an easy video. But if there's something you want to see, just, you know, comment below. Actually, if you just want to be mean to us, drop it in the comments, dude. That's our favorites. So yeah, we'll see you next time.